Hi everyone, I'm Carly of Gnarly Carley Gaming, and today I am back cozy and couchside to talk about Bone Wars by Game Brewer. So I think most people who watch me here have followed me over from the Instagram side of life. That has been my hobby home. It's kind of where I started in terms of board game internet space, where I started posting very casually about my life in the games I play. And from there, this has grown. And now my bio on Instagram is basically saying that I'm the Ryan Reynolds of board games, which is a joke and story from one of my first cons as Gnarly Carley. But before that, it used to say that I was a philosophy and history nerd with a board game addiction, because that's what my background is in. That's what I went to school for, is history and philosophy. And while that doesn't mean I know everything, it means I'm abundantly curious and I love those fields immensely. And so whenever a game particularly captures something in a significant way for me, in terms of history and those things, it's extra lovely. I have game geekery steeped inside my body. There's so much passion and joy there. And when you combine it with another joy, such as the fields I love, it's all the more so. And so this game, Bone Wars, the first thing that made me be like, yes, please give it to me, was its theme. Because Bone Wars, which I guess I'll show you guys. Bone Wars. I'm very enamored with it. Bone Wars is all about the Great Dinosaur Rush, which were also called the Bone Wars, where two paleontologists basically were rivals and duked it out in terms of paleontology over the better part of 2 decades. They started off as friends, but quickly kind of butted heads. They would bribe researchers. They would destroy each other's sites. They would basically skewer each other, trying to debunk each other in publications. And that tension was just really, really high and makes for a really dramatic history that ended not even in the death of one of them. So their names are Cope and Marsh. And at the end of one of their lives, they basically said that they wanted their brain measured and compared to the other person, which was like a sign of intelligence at the time, after the other person died. That was their challenge to them. And so he donated his brain to science and said, you do the same and we'll measure our skulls. And the other person didn't. But there's this heated rivalry, and the game Bone Wars basically sees players sitting in the middle of it. You're going to play off both sides, kind of working for both of the paleontologists, contributing to their bodies of work, helping them excavate and build up their own sides, but you get points in the end for essentially your loyalty to each side times how well they did in producing a body of work. And as you play both sides, you get a chance to even debunk the other side, something that you might have created. And so you're really toying with this, trying to just edge out the other players by playing both sides in the process. I'm going to explain more of how that works and what that means, but I love that this game just sits you down in the middle of this historical rivalry. I find that very joyful, very silly, but it also creates an abundance of really interesting game mechanics where you are playing against other people because you want to have the most points in the end, best score. But you are also kind of weighing what you do and how you're gaining points. Your loyalty will only ever increase with these folks, but how well you allow them to succeed as paleontologists and how you tear them down and build them up respectively, you can kind of change and have this kind of dance in the game. And so just how you carve out that win is much more interesting than just like a linear progression within gameplay. So that was a lot of words and a lot of chaos, but let's break down this game a bit. So each of the 4 rounds comprises a set number of years. And during that time period, you will set off to basically do work for either Cope or Marsh, one of the rivals. And everything you contribute during that round, the publications you create, the theories you debunk, will essentially be in service of the person who has your loyalty at the moment. You'll mark it on your board with one of their faces up, and if your loyalty should ever change, you just flip it over as you go. Players can't choose to all be on the same side. Essentially, in a 4-player game, 2 will be able to be for Cope and 2 will be able to be for Marsh. And in choosing so, you'll also slot yourself at a university, which will give you some special abilities that you can utilize in the round. And so the choice at first is consequential just in terms of what abilities you want to have access to, and later it might be more significant both for who you want to continue to support as well as those crucial abilities that you might want to continue to weigh. Once everybody has an allegiance as well as an occupation, which will just basically be kind of starting resources and income, then players will set off to perform actions in the round. Players' actions are going to vary in terms of numbers, because the more actions you play, the pricier they get. You might run out of money and just not be able to play an action, or you might choose to hold off so that you can do cheaper actions in the next round of play. For a player's action, they will always be playing a card. And there's 3 major types of cards in the game. There's species cards, paleontologist cards, and team cards. Team cards are kind of that base layer card. These will start in your hand. There's ways to upgrade them, but they give you access to those basic actions for resource collection and growth that you need. The paleontologist card, on the other hand, are going to let you do those big hard-hitting actions. Think of like when you score those points. These paleontologist action cards will be things like making a publication, turning in a species card and bones in order to say, hey, look what we found. Or alternatively, turning in bones to say, hey, that side thought they found this, but now we're taking those points away because they were wrong. Debunking is another one. Other things are going to do stuff like those ongoing goals. So there's awards that you can get for getting a certain amount of research done in specific categories, and that will vary game to game. And so when you score those, you'll use a paleontologist action card to do it. But that is kind of those cumulative things that will get you points in the end for your side. And because there's 2 sides that you're playing off and that can switch, you'll be kind of pulling back and forth. Everything will be built up, and that will be marked on these like beautiful little bookcases when you score points of different value for your side. And then, for instance, when you debunk, it switches side. And so that's kind of what paleontologist cards do, and you can do those by playing a paleontologist card. The only difference between the cards is some of them favor certain actions or not, which can get you a bonus for doing it. Fueling your engine, yada, yada, yada. Now, those team cards, however, are your bread and butter. They're how you're going to get to journey to different dig sites, how you're going to excavate at them. Getting those species cards you need to be like, hey, this is a species I've discovered, as well as all of the bones that you need to turn in to showcase it. And when it comes to these action cards, each of them are slightly different. They'll have a different number of action points, which means that like I can use an action to move. I can use 1 to get a bone at a certain level. I can use 2 to get a species card or to make camp there, which gets me a bonus specific to that location. And so some action cards will let you do more than one thing. So I might like bounce around, grab a couple of things. Some of them are more limited in the number of things you can do, but they let you like dig deeper, for instance. And all of these can be upgraded throughout the game with different bonuses you can acquire. And so those are kind of that like staple resource acquisition. I need cards, I need bones. And then the paleontologist side of it is more of the like, let's score, let's turn this stuff in. Pretty classic little balance, but a pretty cool little mechanism that you have. You'll every round have access to all your action cards, but as you use your paleontologist cards, they're gonna go away. I did say there were 3 cards, however, and that last one is the species card. And as I said, a lot of times you're turning those in with publications to showcase the species and learn about it. And then as you research, you'll kind of have those in a set capacity that can score you awards. Very, very simple. However, you can also use those as a wild card. If I have an extra species in my hand, I can play it and have it act as either an action card or a paleontologist card, thus giving me some flexibility, because if I wasn't able to take an action at the beginning of the round to get me the paleontologist cards I need, but I really want to score something else, being able to excavate, dig up one of those species cards and use it as a wild is really useful, especially if I don't need it to publish. And so that's kind of your wild flexible card, especially as things ebb and flow in the game. If you commit to the bit with a species and then realize you don't really need it, you have in your hand something really powerful to be able to let you pivot later in the game. Again, if you use it as a paleontologist or an action card, you'll lose it. So you can't use it for more than one thing, but every round you'll kind of have an influx of resources and you can strive to get more of these things. Additionally, when you do things like publish, depending on the type of thing that you publish, there's extra bonuses that keep fueling your resources. So I don't want this to make it seem like it's really tough to get things or that you only have to use team actions in order to acquire stuff. If you're smart and plan and maximize bonuses, you can get a lot of stuff fueled back into you. But that is the larger framework of the game. And what it all culminates to is this bookshelf. When I publish based on what I publish, which is typically just how much resources, how many bones I'm turning in to define this species. If I just use like 2, for instance, my rewards will be more minimal. But you'll get some loyalty, which will tick you up on basically kind of a reputation track of sorts on one side or the other, depending on who you're playing for. And you'll either, if you're publishing, add to the bookshelf of theirs, or if you're debunking, take away from their bookshelf and on the other side in favor of yours. And at the end of the second round and at the end of the fourth round, wherever you are on the track has a multiplier, and that will be multiplied by how many bookshelves are full for that person's side. And so I'm trying to make this swing of where am I higher than other players and what side do I need to swing it to and how can I get higher on both sides respectively so I can capitalize on the points my opponents are crafting. The first time I played, my friend went really, really hard on Cope and I was going hard on Marsh. And what won me the game was the fact that I was able to switch allegiances and build up just as high as them, and they weren't able to quite do the same on the other side, meaning I benefited from all the research that they were able to do because their side still liked me, but they didn't quite make it the same way on my own to capitalize off of the esteem on the other side. And so what I really like in this game is that everyone's points could in theory help everyone. And the things that I build could be really awesome. I could build up on my side, but if it's debunked and swings the other way, the thing I built could end up being my opponent's success. So it's this dance around other people. You can see what they're drafting. There's open information. There's a lot of resources. There's tons of ways to upgrade yourself and you can't do them all. And there's a lot of replayability in the game. So I think as a game, it is solid. It is not hard to digest. It steeps you in a theme that I really, really enjoy. And it's just kind of lovely. I think it's really replayable and has a wonderful home in my collection. I think theme can sometimes be a blinder. I did a whole video in terms of like breaking a game down into cones and cubes and would I still like it? And I think in this case I do. Do I think Dinosaurs make it a whole lot nicer? Yes, I do. I love the theme. I love the rich history. I like how it's not just a backdrop to the game, but actually informs the full mechanical feel of it. I like the different types of actions and how they feel. I enjoy the art. Actually, the art is even historically cool because they decided to do art that isn't accurate to all the dinosaurs, but is accurate to how Cope and Marsh first sketched out those dinosaurs, how they envisioned them. We know more now, but they lean on that old understanding, and I love it. It saturates you in a time and place while being beautiful and fun and yeah, just super, super lovely. I do think the game played better at 3 or 4 people than it did at 2 for me. And so I know that that is key for a lot of folks who play mainly in a couple. It is still good because you are forced in different sides, but I just think it was a little bitier when you had people fighting on both sides a little more dramatically. The switches were just a lot more intense when we had a full 4-player count because only 2 could be on each side each round. And so rushing to finish a round means you get kind of your first dibs. There are some key ways you can switch mid-round, but they're limited. And so watching that dance with everybody and kind of hawking everyone just added a little bit to the tension and joy of the situation for me. But that is it for Bone Wars. I am very smitten with this game. I'm very excited for Game Brewer, and it's a game worth checking out. I will definitely link it below. I've had phenomenal interest in this one. I think in terms of Instagram games, usually when I get a game, I'll like post about it, that it's here, that I'm excited, and then I'm like digging through the rule book. And this one probably got as much hype as I had in my body when I first saw the email, and they're like, do you want to do the Bone Wars? It's this. And I was like, I know what it is. I want it so much. And that interest was in spades around when I started posting about it. People just dig dinos, but I also think people really enjoy something that's just richer in a way too. It's not dinos plastered on something for the sake of it. It is a really cool moment in history brought to life in a gamey way. And I think it's spectacular. So link below if you'd like to check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And otherwise, I will see you all for the next video.